Hello again. In this tutorial we're going to talk about how to evaluate your model once you've built it. You evaluate your models using the model dashboard, which can be found by clicking on the models link on the projections page. This gives you a summary and overview of every model that you have built. As you can see, I have 3 models and I have a tab here for each of the models. This gives you the name, what it's predicting, the type of model that it is, and when it last predicted and when it was last built, or when the date it was built at. Next, it gives a summary of all the variables that are in the model. This has a table for the basic variables and a table for the advanced variables if it includes any. So in this model you can see we have the basic variables that are used in calculating daily fantasy points for DraftKings: assists, 3-pointers made, points, rebounds, steals, blocks, and turnovers for all of the players' last 10 games. So it's a fairly basic model, and every user starts off with this model in their model dashboard. Next, you can actually get into evaluating your model. You do this through the Backtesting Quick and Backtesting Slow tabs. These give you a summary which provides you with information about how your model did on each of 10 days. The 10 days can be found down here at the bottom. So you can see the average points the model scored if you were to use those projections and calculate one lineup using the 0.524 optimizer. Next, it shows you some statistical information: average mean squared error. This is a measure of how far away each of your projections were from truth. So it might have said that a player scored 30 points when in fact they scored 33 points. And this kind of gives you an idea of how far away you are from what actually happened. So lower is better. Then you get average mean absolute error, which is another category where you want lower is better. And then you get these percentile scores, which shows you how well you did against all other users that had models when this model was created. So essentially it's points, its mean squared error, and its mean absolute error get compared against every other model built by users, and it ranks you. Next, you can check out the individual days that it went through this process of predicting and optimizing a lineup for. The Backtesting Quick looks at 10 different random days in the past over the 2015-2016 seasons. And as you can see, you kind of get this idea of how many points you scored on a given day, the mean absolute error for that day, and finally the percent of optimal. This is the percent of points your lineup got after using the optimization when compared to the optimal lineup. So that would be the best lineup that you could possibly make on that day. One thing to note is these are typically an underestimate of what a person would do on that day if they use the model, since the model doesn't know who was injured or who was a game time decision. It just knows who played. It doesn't know any of that information that's important to daily fantasy sports when evaluating player injuries and the impact that would make. So just keep in mind that all of these numbers, for example average points, are typically an underestimate of how well a person would do if they were to use this model, combined with their knowledge of the player injuries and other information for that day. Finally, players are able to backtest the model slowly. Now, you do that by clicking on a button that's right here. Currently, I have no backtests left. Users are limited in the number of backtests they can use due to the computational power and time that's required in doing a slow backtest. The slow backtest goes to the past. We'll look at an example in trial 1 of a slow backtest. A slow backtest gives the same information as the quick backtest: average points, mean squared error, and mean absolute error, but it goes day by day through the past 20 days, and it calculates the predictions. It then optimizes a lineup and uses that lineup for that night. So it goes day by day in a very slow, iterative process to give you an idea of exactly how you would have done on those days, obviously as an underestimate, since it still doesn't know who was injured and who was playing or any of that personal information that has to be added when deciding on a lineup to use. These should give you a decent idea of how your model is performing, and it should give you an idea of how to compare different models. You can go between 2 or 3 different models and look at which one performs the best on past data, and then you can start modifying using that models to create even better models. Thank you for your time, and please see our other tutorials if you have more questions.